Chapter 15 of Zadig. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Zadig, or the Book of Fate, by Voltaire. Chapter 15. The Basilisk. As Zadig was traversing a verdant meadow, he perceived several young female Syrians, intent on searching for something very curious that lay concealed, as they imagined, in the grass. He took the freedom to approach one of them, and ask her, in the most courteous manner, if he might have the honour to assist her in her researches. "Have a care," said she. "What we are hunting after, sir, is an animal that will not suffer itself to be touched by a man." "'Tis somewhat surprising," said Zadig. "May I be so bold, pray, as to ask you what you are in pursuit after, that shuns the touch of anything but the hands of the fair sex?" "'Tis, sir," said she, "the basilisk." "A basilisk, madam?" said he. "And pray, if you will be so good as to inform me, with what view are you searching after a creature so very difficult to be met with?" "'Tis, sir," said she, "for our lord and master Ogul, whose castle you see situate on the river side at the bottom of the meadow. We are all his vassals. Ogul, as you must know, is in a very bad state of health, and his first physician has ordered him, as a specific, to eat a basilisk boiled in rose water. And as that animal is very hard to be catched, and will suffer nothing to approach it but one of our sex, our dying sovereign, Ogul, has promised to honour her that shall be so happy as to catch it for him, so far as to make her his consort. The case being thus circumstantiated, sir, I hope you will not interrupt me any longer, lest my rivals here in the field should happen to circumvent me." Zadig withdrew, and left the Syrian ladies in quest of their imaginary booty, in order to pursue his intended journey. But as he came to the banks of a rivulet, at the remotest part of the meadow, he perceived another young lady, reclined on the grass, and entirely disengaged. Her stature seemed majestic, but her face was covered with a veil, and her eyes were fixed as one at her looking glass on the river. Every now and then a sigh burst out, as if her heart were breaking. In her hand she held a little wand or rod, with which she was tracing out some characters on the dry sand that lay between the flowery bank she sat on and the purling current. Zadig's curiosity induced him, unperceived, to observe her operations at some distance. But approaching nearer, and perceiving very distinctly the first character to be an Z, the next an A, and the third a D, he started. But when he saw the additional capitals of I and G, his astonishment was too great for words to express. He stood for some time perfectly thunderstruck, and as motionless as a statue. At last, in a soft, faltering tone, he broke silence. "O generous lady," said he, "forgive a stranger, one overwhelmed with sorrows, like yourself, if he asks you, by what amazing accident he finds the name of Zadig delineated by so angelic a hand." Thus unexpectedly interrupted, and at the sound of those words, she turned her head, and with a trembling hand, lifting up her veil, she espied Zadig himself, upon which she shrieked, and as her heart was fluttered between the two extremes of transport and surprise, she fainted away, and gently dropped into his arms. 'Twas, it seems, Astarte herself. 'Twas the Queen of Babylon. 'Twas the very goddess whom Zadig adored. 'Twas, in short, the very identical lady whose heart fate he had so long deplored, and for whose sake he had felt so many agonizing pains. For a few minutes he stood speechless, and deprived, as it were, of all his senses, whilst his eyes were fixed on his Astarte, who began to revive, and cast a wishful glance at him, attended with some confusion. O ye immortal powers, cried he, who preside over the destiny of us frail mortals, ye have restored me my Astarte. But alas, at what a conjuncture, in what a place, and in what a state and condition do I view her? He threw himself prostrate on the ground, and kissed the dust of her feet. The Queen of Babylon raised him up, and obliged him to sit by her on the flowery bank whereon she was reposed. Every now and then she wiped her eyes, as the tears trickled down afresh her lovely cheeks. 20 times she endeavoured to renew her discourse, but was interrupted by her sighs. She asked him over and over to relate to her the hardships he had ran through since their parting, and by what chance he came to traverse the solitary meadow, but prevented him at the same time from returning any answer, by repeating question upon question. At last she gave him a particular detail of her own misfortunes, and again requested to know his. Both of them, in short, having in some measure appeased the tumult of their souls, Zadig, in a few words, informed her of the motives that brought him thither. But tell me, O unfortunate though ever venerable Queen, how I came to find you out, reclining on this verdant bank, dressed in this servile habit, accompanied by other female slaves, who I find have been all day long in quest after a basilisk, which, as I understand, is by order of a celebrated physician to be dissolved in rose water, as a specific medicine for his dying patient. While they busy in their fruitless search, said the beauteous Astarte, I'll tell you the whole series of sorrows which I have undergone since last we parted. And since heaven has thus unexpectedly blessed my eyes once more with the sight of my dear Zadig, I'll no longer exclaim against my impropitious stars. You are not insensible that the jealous king, my spouse, was disgusted to find you the most amiable of all mortals, and that for no other reason he determined to strangle you, and poison me. You know very well too, that indulgent heaven inspired, as it were, my little dwarf, with artful means to give me timely notice of the rash resolutions of the king, my cruel husband. No sooner had the faithful Cador obliged you to obey my orders, and to fly the court, but he ventured to enter my apartment in the dead of night through a private door. He snatched me up, and conveyed me directly into the temple of Orosmades, where the holy Magus, who was his brother, locked me up in that august and awful statue that stands erect upon the pavement of the temple, and, Colossus-like, touches the lofty ceiling with his head. There I lay concealed, or rather buried, for some time, though taken all imaginable care of, and furnished with all the necessaries of life by that venerable and loyal priest. In the mean time, his Apothecary enter'd at Break of Day into my Apartment.